The laws will come into effect, but till everybody gets used to it and the new stores get their licenses, some provinces have more up and running right away, others don't. But I think they're taking a pretty common sense, pragmatic and measured approach to get the new stores online.
And they offer a little perspective.
Please keep in mind that the enforcement of the new cannabis laws is not the only public safety issue for police agencies in Canada.
One priority, though, is to keep out organized crime. Once the laws are fully enforced, you will face stiff penalties for possessing cannabis you know to be illicit.
We're also counting on clear packaging and labeling that details penalties for illegal production and trafficking of cannabis.
And police say they are ready to deal with drivers on pot. While there may be only one roadside detection device that has been approved, that is just one enforcement tool. 13,000 officers across the country are now trained in field sobriety testing. That will increase to 20,000 in the next few years. In addition, 833 officers have received further specialized training as drug recognition experts. The goal is to train 500 more. But when it comes to prosecuting drivers who are dangerously stoned, there could be a potential roadblock in the system. CBC News has learned that the RCMP has some trepidations about the part it plays in this. And Catherine Cullen has the exclusive details tonight.
As legalization kicks in, this could become a more common sight, and that could have some big consequences. In a document obtained by CBC News through access to information, the RCMP predicts its labs will go from processing about 550 samples a year of blood or urine from potentially impaired drivers to around 6,400 a few years later. That's nearly a 12-fold increase.
The first thing that goes through my head is that that's going to be completely unmanageable for the RCMP labs.
The RCMP's labs do testing for police forces across the country, excluding Ontario and Quebec. Police can ask for a blood or urine sample if a driver fails an evaluation by specially trained police officers. Already, it takes 130 days to process a sample. This raises concerns about even greater delays in an already bogged-down court system.
Not only do people have to wait longer to see where their cases are going to go, wait longer to see if charges are approved, wait longer to have those cases progress through the courts, but also victims of impaired driving cases have to wait longer for justice.
And where does that 12-fold number come from? Well, the RCMP wouldn't speak to us on camera, but in emails, the force pointed to what happened in the United Kingdom when that country decided to ramp up the number of officers trained to detect drug driving. Canada's force says the increase will happen gradually, but there's debate about the entire prediction.
The head of Canada's Police Chiefs Association says it's possible to turn to private labs if there is a backlog, but he's skeptical of how big the problem will really be.
I think we will see a bit of an increase, but I don't think there's going to be a dramatic spike.
But a representative from Mothers Against Drunk Driving backs the RCMP's estimate.
Their estimates seem reasonable to me, given the uncertainties. We have a significant number of drug-impaired drivers on the road and relatively few charges and convictions at the current time.
The RCMP says it is hiring new lab staff, but the process takes time, and they won't have everyone hired and fully trained for another couple of years. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now, cities across the country are taking cannabis regulations into their own hands. For smokers in Halifax, that now means they won't be able to light up in public spaces altogether. Instead, they will have to use designated smoking areas. And that's not just for pot, it also targets cigarettes. The sweeping ban, which comes into effect today, is the most restrictive in the country. But as Brett Ruskin explains, the rollout hasn't exactly been smooth.
They should have thought about this a lot more than what they have.
Ruth Ann Murphy knew the smoking ban was coming, but like most Halifax smokers, had hoped to have at least a few spots to still light up.
Everybody's carrying on as usual. That's all we can do.
So people are not following the law?
No, nobody's following the law. Everybody I know that smokes is still going outside and smoking.
The ban covers all smoking on all municipal property. That means no cigarettes, vaping, or cannabis on any sidewalk. But here's the problem. The city promised designated smoking areas. When today's ban came down, each area was far from the downtown core. And even smokers at those sites, like Bob McLean, weren't happy.
It just peeves you off. They kicked us out of inside, and now we're kicked out of outside.
Nova Scotia has the second highest rate of cigarette use in Canada, and the province leads the country in cannabis consumption as well, with 23% of Nova Scotians saying they've used it in the last 3 months. With all those smokers, city staff say more designated smoking areas are coming. Meanwhile, officials are asking non-smoking residents to please not call police on smokers walking down the street. They plan to ticket only the worst offenders.
If people continue to want to flaunt the law, and after many warnings, then we may have to impose the fine.
And if those fines are imposed, they would range between $25 and $2,000. As for the downtown smokers with few places to light up, city officials say they plan to open 24 new spaces across the city by the end of the week. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
Okay, so that's Halifax, but the rules vary in different provinces and cities. For example, in Montreal, you'll be able to smoke pot wherever cigarettes are allowed, and that includes most parks. Broadly speaking, Ontario has the same rules, but individual cities can put more restrictions in place. Take Ottawa. It's banned cannabis from city parks, hospital grounds, and within close proximity to schools. Those same rules will apply in BC, where consuming cannabis won't be allowed in vehicles and playgrounds. Calgary is planning to go even further. Recreational pot will be prohibited in any of the city's public spaces.